Welcome to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast with Michael Becker and Paul Peebles. During this program, you will hear interviews with real-life successful investors who will share their stories and provide useful advice on how to acquire, finance, and operate apartment complexes. Now, here they are, Michael Becker and Paul Peebles.
Welcome to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Peebles, National Underwriter for Old Capital. And joining me today, the governor himself, Mr. Michael Becker.
Hey, Paul.
How are you?
Doing well.
That's the unofficial title.
It is. One day I'll get on the ballot.
You didn't win the election here in Texas, did you?
No, I just bought a bunch of apartments. You called me that. So.
You own a lot of real estate. With a lot of real estate becomes a lot of responsibility. So you are the governor of Beckerville. And again, how many units do you?
Let's see. We've done about 6,700 units, so we own about 4,500 today.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So Michael, as you know, has gone from being a loaner of money to being an owner of real estate. He's done a great job over at SPI. So we appreciate Michael joining us in the podcast. So also want to remind everybody that if you can, find us on iTunes, come back to iTunes if you can, and leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes. We would appreciate that. That would definitely help our show and give the message to other people too. So we appreciate that if you can. And don't forget the Old Capital Podcast. Again, 2 things in the Old Capital Podcast is, 1, download that 17-page white paper report on multifamily financing. I think you would find that very helpful. It's kind of a document that Michael, I, and James Eng with Old Capital wrote, kind of give you the basics of underwriting multifamily properties and for you to do that. Also, too, James did a 3-part series of a webinar on multifamily financing. They're probably about 45 minutes to 50 minutes each. I think that you would find that very helpful and kind of understand and financing and set the expectations correctly on what is needed. It's a lot different from single family or other types of transactions. So James did a great job doing the webinar on that one.
So it's at oldcapitalpodcast.com, correct?
What did I say?
It's Old Capital Podcast.
Oldcapitalpodcast.com. You are absolutely correct. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
So in the podcast today, we have 2 friends of kind of the show, Jake and Gino. And you may have heard them on their podcast, Jake and Gino's podcast. It's a real estate investment mentoring podcast, giving some great inside information. We had the opportunity back about 2-3 weeks ago to join Jake and Gino in Nashville, Tennessee, within their group. They probably had 300-400 people in Nashville. What a great audience, a lot of people seeking information on what was going on in the multifamily industry. And a lot of times, they give out a lot of great information, but sometimes we don't understand a little bit about what their background is. So what we wanted to do today is kind of talk with Jake and Gino and find out a little bit more about what they did and how they're qualified to give out the information. So I found them to be great talent, and we really enjoyed being part of their group. I know that Brad Sumrock came up there too and talked a little bit, and so we were appreciated being able to join them. So again, Jake, Gino, thanks for coming to the Old Capital Podcast, and thanks for being available.
Hey, it's our pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So it's Jake and Gino, but how come it's not Gino and Jake? That's what I want to know.
Our marketing guy thought it sounded better, right? And Gino, what do you usually say? Age before beauty? Or beauty? What do you say, man?
Well, it's funny because my kids asked me that same question. I said, you know what? I don't have to go first. As long as I'm part of it, I don't care what order I go in. That's all I care about, right?
That's great. So, again, thanks, guys, for being on the show. I'm going to turn it over to Michael.
Yeah.
Let's start talking with some questions.
Yeah, maybe a good place to start potentially. Just guys, give us a little bit of background on yourselves. Maybe Jake, you go first. Tell us a little bit about your background professionally, then how you got into the multifamily space.
Yeah, so I was living in New York going back to 2010, and I was working for a pharmaceutical company and seeing how taxes work. And at that time, I was, hanging out with guys like Gino, and I saw that he was paying $25,000 a year in property taxes. I was getting whacked 6 or 7% from the state of New York for state income taxes. And I said, man, I could make a move and make an immediate $6,000-7,000 raise just by moving on property taxes, get better weather, and get somewhere that has, that lowers the property taxes. So I'm reducing state income tax down to 0, lowering property taxes, and getting better weather. So I started an Excel sheet. I basically identified Northern Florida. I looked at Texas, and I was also looking at Tennessee. And Tennessee was sort of the best fit for us to commute back and forth to New York. My wife felt comfortable with it. And there was a job opening with the pharmaceutical company I was with at the time. So I was able to make a lateral transfer there. And I was being mentored at the time by a doctor and Gino about multifamily real estate. And that was really what I wanted to do. It was coming off the back of the Great Recession. People really got hurt. I didn't want some stock manager controlling my funds, and I wanted yield. I had no idea about all the other benefits that were going to come along with cost segregation and refi and roll and all these other things that started coming out of the woodwork. I just wanted something that I was going to be able to control. I was going to be able to go and kick it every day and have a tangible asset. So Gino and I tried for about 2 years to get into a deal. We got a ton of rejection from the brokers. We didn't have any credibility. But, similar to what we were saying, Michael, in your first deal, you maybe not get the nicest deal on your first one, but we were able to get into a property finally. And then that credibility piece started to click. And from that point, it was off to the races. We just started knocking them out left and right.
Well, good. Gino, maybe give us a little brief background on yourself as well, then kind of maybe talk a little bit about the podcast that you guys host to start out.
Sure, Michael. I was a loaner too, but not a loaner in the loaning industry. I was a loaner at my restaurant. I owned the restaurant for 20 years. I was bored. I was not making the money. I have 6 kids. So I said to myself, I need to do something here. I need to make a shift. I was fortunate to meet Jake. We partnered up back in 2013. We bought our first deal, and we did everything backwards. We didn't know about syndication. We didn't know about raising money. We just wanted to be financially free. That's what we thought. So we started buying these things. I guess, timing is everything. We got lucky with the timing and bought our first deal in 2013, refinanced it 18 months later, put that money into the next deal. And in the last 5 years, we've been able to refinance over $8 million out of our deals and grow our portfolio to 1,000 units. We stumbled upon syndication about 1.5 years ago. I say stumbled because you start running out of money after a while and you want to really scale up and get into these bigger deals. So, we've been blessed with the timing of the market, but I think it's, knowledge and action equals power, I guess. We had a little knowledge, just took some massive action. Here we are 5 years later having a great time.
Well, that's great. That's great. So yeah, maybe start from the beginning. I think you guys are a little bit different than most people have had on the podcast. Most people that we do business with and we interview on the podcast have got in the business and buy apartments through the same way that I do, which is through syndication. So as you guys mentioned, you don't have all the money in the world. So if you want to do bigger and larger deals, that generally requires you pulling capital of others. So maybe Jake, just kind of start talking about, what maybe the first deal you guys did. And, you said you just kind of weren't very purposeful when you got into it. You just kind of did it and figured it out after you bought your first deal. But maybe kind of talk about that and kind of some of the benefits and challenges of just owning the deal in your own account without any private investors.
Well, there was a lot of challenges because we didn't have much money and we didn't know what the hell we were doing. So I think that was the first,
two problems, right?
Yeah, and we started self-managing. So we took every gut punch known to man getting into this business. Really, again, did not have much knowledge getting started. But the first deal we had was a 25 unit. I started self-managing it. The guy that I hired on to help with the maintenance end of it ended up being a heroin addict. I remember, I was there on the properties, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays trying to lease them up myself. And I don't recommend anyone doing it the way we did it. We did it the extremely hard way. We were stupid. There was times where I was riding lawnmowers. I call it the I'm a mentality. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do everything. We thought that was the path to victory. Grew up in a very blue collar, background and thought that, to make money, you had to do everything yourself. Didn't realize about scale till much later on. And typically in my life, I've always learned things by doing. So we got on the property and I remember it was a Saturday morning. I was knocking on the guy's door because he had a unit at the property and I couldn't get him up. And I thought, man, this guy must have been drinking the night before, had a super bad hangover or something. But it turned out later that he had a drug problem. And that's when we learned about the whole opioid epidemic and that there's probably some playing going on with the tenants there. So, we learned to fire very quickly early on. I think that's one of the things that helped us so much with the property management company. We started identifying folks that had good customer service and we started getting out the folks that were not a good fit. We had people steal from us early on, you name it, we had it. But it really led to, you guys may have read the book Blue Ocean Strategy. I think this really led to what our Blue Ocean Strategy was because we buy C and B class apartments and we don't want to participate in the red ocean where everyone's, fighting for that nickel in that real competitive space. We search for the blue ocean where we're trying to separate ourselves. I always say that we want to be the Chick-fil-A of apartment homes. You pull into Chick-fil-A for lunch, it's out the door, there's a super long line. Well, what's the difference? they get the customer service right. In the C and B class apartment space, the thing that everyone's missing right now, a lot of these mom and pop owners that we buy from have terrible customer service. If you can get that piece right in the C and B apartment space, I think that's going to be everyone's, key to success. That's the space that we operate in. So we worked tirelessly, over the last year or so and putting in a sound customer service program into our communities, because we've been able to buy from these mom and pop owners in the C and B class. And every time we've bought from them, there's been deferred maintenance. We call it the death spiral, where a lot of the tenants, they don't want them to call. They'll keep their rent suppressed so they don't get phone calls from them. And we're able to go in and turn these communities around and put in professional management and a high level of customer service. So
that's great. So maybe talk about the first couple deals that you did. How big was the first deal? First, maybe one or two deals that you guys did as far as number of units?
Yeah, Gino, you want to hit those?
Yeah, sure. The only other thing I would add to that was we learned early on that multifamily is not really just in business. I mean, people want to come in and just throw an investment. We figured out early on that, hey, this is a business. You can scale it. You can have multiple streams of income coming from this business, whether it's the education aspect of it, whether it's a syndication piece of it. Maybe you want to open up a brokerage. Maybe you want to open up plumbing business, whatever. But that's one thing I learned early on. And I'm glad we did it our way. We fumbled in. We figured it out. The first deal was 25 units. We got 10% owner financing on it. Me, Jake, and my brother did the first deal together. 3 months later, this is what I tell everybody, it's the momentum and it's the ability to get in the game. 3 months later was a 36-unit deal. 6 months after that, our third deal was 136 units, which was, it was the big hurrah for us. So the $4 million deal. I think that put us on the map, and that really gave us the ability to scale. And I think 3 months after that deal, Jake just quit his job, fired his boss, and me a year after that, I ended up leaving the restaurant. So it was rough in the beginning, resident managers, but as long as I tell people, scale up, try to get into that big deal so you can actually start hiring professional management. You can start hiring maintenance instead of doing it all yourself. That's what you're trying to do in multifamily.
That's good. So scale, where was the last deal or two that you guys, it sounds like you're in the process of buying two right now. How large are those two deals?
Yeah, it's kind of our bread and butter. They're both from mom and pop owners. One's 132 units, the other one's 145 units. One of them is in Kentucky, and the other is in Knoxville. And same thing with all the deals. Poor systems in place, self-management. That's really what we identify, and that's been our key to success. So we've gone in and put professional management in place, and we're able to, anywhere from $200 to $300, been able to increase the rents and clean these properties up.
Yeah, how did you find these deals?
So the one deal is through a broker relationship. It was an off-market deal. I think it's going to be pretty solid for us. So that was the Kentucky deal. And the other one was actually through a network that I have, that it was an owner that, I've been kind of working with for the last 2 years now, and saying when it comes time and you're ready to sell, there's not going to be a broker commission or anything like that. So I'd love to, take a run at it. And we thought we had it 8 months ago, and then it went away. And then we finally got under contract, and we're closing December 10th.
And where do you guys physically live, and how far away from the property?
So I live in Knoxville. So a bulk of our, like I said, our assets are here in the East Tennessee area. And we're looking right now as a 4-hour radius around Knoxville, because we can touch Nashville, we can touch Kentucky, we can touch Carolinas, Chattanooga, Georgia. So we have a really good footprint right now of markets that we're trying to break into, and we can expand our management into those markets. And Gino's actually in Florida. So we're just looking to have a good footprint in the Southeast right now.
And how difficult is it to evict tenants in Kentucky and Tennessee?
It's a 14-day eviction. It's a very landlord-friendly state, and we're very fortunate for that. It's not like New York where it could take months on end. So, I think being in a much more business-friendly climate, it was also a plus or a benefit to the move.
So, Gino, you I guess were in the restaurant business. How many lasagna dinners did you have to sell to even think about retiring?
Well, you know what? Retirement's not on the radar. It's a job. I mean, I sold, and actually, I had good food. I mean, it was great. And I always tell people I had one restaurant in 25 years. I couldn't scale that restaurant. I've got 1,000 units in multifamily in 5 years. Once the light bulb goes off as you get older, and you start saying to yourself, let's start building a business. The restaurant business is great. The reason why I got out was, you work on the holidays, you work on the weekends, you work when everyone else is having fun. It's okay when you're in your 20s and 30s, but once you start having kids and you're like, dude, I do not want to be working this weekend. I was just fortunate that I met Jake, and, I was investing in New York, up in Rochester, trying to scale there. I was using property management up there. I just hated the demographics up there. Section 8 tenants, no jobs up there. It was just,
yeah, and that's kind of what my point is that, in multifamily, it is scalable. and you can take the weekends off. And just like in the restaurant business, you cannot take the weekends off. You got to work all the holidays. And if you get sick, your business is going to have a problem. And in the multifamily business, I mean, if you have a good property management company, you can go to Florida, you can go to the Bahamas, you can go to California, all these places that you'd want to go with to enjoy your life instead of staying inside the restaurant 16, 17 hours a day. And if you have 6 kids, I mean, you need a way to supplement your income for one thing, and then, show the kids another way of building a business. So I'm sure, have you brought some of your kids to even start thinking about multifamily?
Well, yeah, I mean, we homeschool the kids. So, I mean, money is always on the table. I'm discussing money. I want to create a little youth academy for the kids because I think it's really important. I think they need to learn finances. And that's one of my goals with Jake and Gino. I want to create a little youth academy for the children. And they've seen the properties. They've been on the properties. They know. They understand cash flow. So it's important. It's something that they saw me struggling as a restaurant owner, and now they see my second life, and it's just a completely different life for me.
I want to jump in here because when I first met Gino, for the folks that are going to see this on YouTube, he was in the back of the restaurant with his arms crossed. And I was actually friends with his brother before I was friends with him. I always thought he was kind of like this mean guy that just hung out in the back. And it's because he was pissed off because he was, guys weren't showing up to work. He'd end up having to wash the dishes, and he was just having a very struggle grind with the restaurant business. And it took time before I actually got to know him, before I started, talking about leaving to go to Tennessee. His brother introduced me. We actually got to know each other better, but I always thought he was an angry guy. And it was because of the things that were going on and the push that was happening at the restaurant before I actually really got to know him. He was a big softie, but that's the story there. So
that's great. So I found you guys host a podcast, Wheelbarrow Profit. So maybe talk a little bit about that. And you also have a book. So maybe you guys can mention that a little bit. Then we can maybe hopefully ask you guys a few top lessons you guys have learned. Well, yeah, tell us a little bit about the book or the podcast that you guys have.
Yeah, I think it was all based on our experience in doing. And we realized that multifamily is a 3-legged stool. And we really chunk it down into a framework, which is buy right, manage right, and finance right. You can't go back on the price. What you pay for it is what it's going to be. It's fixed forever. So we try to put parameters in place so that people are buying on actuals and they're buying on something that's going to cash flow. Same thing as you guys know all too well is that we're looking for long-term fixed rate financing because we look at that as a second wheel of the wheelbarrow. We want these things to be as safe as possible, 10, 15-year debt on these so we can really ride out the times. And then the third leg, which we represent the wheel, it's constant and ongoing, is the manage right portion. So, I really do. I think that if you can nail those 3 pieces of your business, you're going to do really well. And we learned that through, our experience in the business. And that's why we wrote the book. And we've named the podcast the same thing. We try to offer actionable content and things that we're actually using in our business week in and week out on the show.
That's great. So maybe I can get you guys to maybe give some advice. A lot of people that listen to our podcast, I'm sure yours as well, are kind of first timers, or maybe they own a deal or two. You guys have been able to successfully scale from 0 units over 1,000 now, and most of those, as we mentioned, you guys just kind of did with your own capital. We're now just kind of getting into syndication. So I don't know if you maybe kind of talk through some of the things that you've learned from doing a bunch of deals just with your own capital, and then maybe some of the things that you now have taken and maybe that either was surprising to you, or this kind of difference between doing deals on your own money versus actually taking investor capital and doing this syndication. So maybe if you have a few things you want to share with you, some experiences, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll jump in with one, and then Gino, if you want to hit it. I think for anyone that's starting out, a lot of folks ask us, well, give us an idea of what these expenses should cost and give us an average or a rule of thumb. And I think that's the most dangerous thing you could possibly do when underwriting your first deal. I think the most important thing to do is verify the income. It may be old school, but I want to see bank statements. I want to see if that actual money is hitting the account. I always verify that. And then I tell everybody to do a budget, because a lot of times I think, and it's been on some of the smaller deals, not necessarily the bigger deals, but you got to get your expenses right. A lot of time the income is what it is, and the expenses are where guys are going to get burned because they may be underwriting for $35,000 or $4,000 a door. In reality, it's going to be higher than that. And I think the area where most guys starting out get burned is that they don't attribute enough to the expenses on the front end, and that's where the deal falls apart. Or after they buy it, they didn't put enough down for their expenses, that's where they get burned. So really do a full budget, verify, know what the taxes are going to go to. Even in East Tennessee, you can go from one county over, and you may see utility differences or tax differences that are way different from the next county. So you got to very much get in line with your expenses, or I think you're going to get hurt.
You know anything to add?
And I think, Michael, for me, a couple things. It might sound a little self-serving, but if you're going to get into the business, get education. I get educated. I got a mentor. I did some real estate coaching. I actually went to life coaching school, become a certified life coach, learn about yourself, learn about why you're getting into the business, become crystal clear of what you're doing. Just don't jump in there. Number two, don't expect to hit a home run in the first 12 months you get into the business. It took Jake and I 18 months to get our first deal. It took us a long time to get that first deal. We stuck in there. We did the little step ladders, our daily routine. We kept getting rejected. After 18 months of looking, we finally found the deal. The next thing is, don't be afraid to join mastermind groups and continue to do your education and spend money with like-minded people who are doing the business. It's all about the community. It's all about, sharing your successes and sharing your wins with others and just keeping that motivation going. And I think the last part is, strive to grow a big team. Team building in real estate, that's what it's all about. If you don't have a good team around you, you're not going to succeed.
Oh, that's all good advice.
So I've always heard the real estate is easy, the people are tough. So any funny stories in real estate, whether it was due diligence, buying a property, managing people, any dead people on your property?
Had a handful of dead people, but I remember this one time that we had this employee that was, a couple of times we'd get money orders in, and people were stealing money orders and literally trying to handwrite their name over the checks, and we'd find them missing, ask the tenant, they're like, I put the money order in the box, this, that, or the other thing. And I remember this one day I called Gino, I was pissed off, and he's like, dude, you gotta chill out, because he thought I was gonna go like rough the guy up or something. And he's like, look, it's $200. The guy took $200. Just let the guy go. It's not worth getting fired up, because then the guy's gonna come back and break a window, and it's gonna be even a bigger thing. But I think sometimes having partnerships can call each other. Maybe the guy's got a different opinion where you're acting emotionally in the moment, and then you can, be a little more rational and level set versus getting too fired up. But, we've had the fires before. We've had the unfortunate times where, look, people pass away. You're dealing with thousands of people at the end of the day, and that's part of life. So it can be challenging when you stumble across these things. You try to put systems in place. And I always love the Ray Dalio statement that it's another one of those. If you reflect on the issue that took place and then you put a system and a way of working in place so your staff knows how to handle that next time versus it being something new and you don't know how to deal with it, I think that's the key to all these things as they come up, is putting systems in place to handle it the next time it comes up so that it's not fresh and it's not new and you're not trying to figure it out again. So that's what we've attempted to do in our business.
Any words of advice for somebody that's just coming into the business? I mean, I hear mentor, I hear thought leaders, join groups that are positive. Again, going back to the business, if you're an engineer or an attorney just looking to get into the business, any words of advice, Gino?
Yeah, well, I would say our motto is blue collar work ethic. I mean, that's what we talk about, the blue collar work ethic, where you go to work every day and you lean in. I mean, 3 years ago, mold was a big situation for us. We didn't know how to handle mold. You learn that situation. A fire was a big situation. We didn't know how to handle that. Once you handle that, you grow. That problem doesn't become a problem anymore. It's in your rearview mirror. I think if the attorney wants to get in, I think if a doctor wants to get in, find a group like yourself, like Michael, who's syndicating deals. Jump on board. Give them a little bit of money as syndication. Maybe give them $50,000 or $100,000. You're in the game as a limited partner. You're part of that deal. You get the experience. You get to ride on Michael's coattails. I mean, that's an awesome thing. You're getting a return. You're learning. Hopefully, you'll get on Michael's webinars. You'll get on Jake and Gino's webinars. That's one way to start. And actually, the most important thing is about the sponsor. Michael's got, I heard he said he has 4,600 units right now. That's somebody I'd love to partner with. So that's what I think an attorney or somebody who's a doctor who doesn't have all the time in the world, if they've got capital, learn how to raise capital and start connecting with other syndicators, maybe getting deals down and putting deals together and start raising that capital for those deals.
Well, thanks for the nice words and endorsement there. I appreciate that.
But seriously, though, I mean, I think the key to it is that you're going to get experience or learn more about the process by working with someone like yourself. And I think the key is so many guys get in and it starts to feel like a pie in the sky when they try to do it themselves. And it's just not attainable. It's this thing up here and it's not for me. And it sounds really cliche, but the best thing that Gino and I have ever done is that we didn't quit. We got a ton of rejection in the beginning of our career. People were telling us that we shouldn't be doing this. What are you guys doing? But we just hung around. We were pesky and we were able able to kind of break through, especially if you have the capital. Partner up with some guys, start learning the process, because you don't need to do it the way we did it, trying to do everything yourself. That is not the way that we recommend doing it, and we did it the wrong way. We did it the hard way, and there's a much cleaner, quicker way to do it. I promise you that. So.
Yeah, no. And one of the things I always like to say, it's like kind of to describe myself as a professional football player here, but it's kind of like when you do this business, it's kind of like going from the college to the pros, that everything, when you first get into it, the first time you see it, everything's really fast. But once you've kind of done this a bunch, everything kind of slows down. And every time there's a problem, anytime a tenant sues you over something, it used to make me nervous and upset, and I'd have to spend a bunch of time trying to figure out what's a proper way of handling it. Now, when you see something, you've already seen it many times.
You've done it how many times? You know what I think it is, Michael? I think you slow down.
Yeah.
I think I slow down. I used to be frantic and freak, we got to do it. And you let it process more, and you've been there. And we still get things done quickly and efficiently, but I've noticed myself slowing down these last few years quite a bit versus how I felt frantic and worried in the past. So
that's right. Yeah. And you just see it. So what I have now is just instincts. I can react to something. I don't need to sit there and spend 2 hours thinking about what the right decision of this thing is, because I already know what the right decision is. So you just kind of make the decision, move forward, and you move on to the next thing. You're able just to do a whole lot more quicker and not panic. And we've had Rob O'Neill speak at our conference. Rob O'Neill's a guy who shot and killed Osama bin Laden a few years ago. And what he always said from stage, what stuck with me, is like, if you want it, if you need to go fast, you need to slow down. Because smooth is slow is fast, and that's kind of really what it is. It's kind of slow down, take a moment, think smooth, and then you'll ultimately end up being faster once you kind of learn how to do something, and it becomes instinctual after a while. So, Paul?
Yeah, one of the things I kind of want to end with here is really talking about multifamily, going back to it, because there's a lot of mentors out there that say, going from 2, then to 4, then to 8, or really just going from 2 to 8 to 10. I mean, yes, that's multifamily, but it's not in the same ballpark as what Mike does or what you guys do. I think when I think of multifamily, it's economies of scale. It is making sure you do the bigger deals. It is doing 50 units. It's doing 75. It's doing 150 to 200 doors. You guys are mentors. You guys have done it. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that before we end the show? Just making sure people understand is that we're not talking about smaller deals. We're talking about larger deals and being able down the road to retire.
I just think it's so much easier to do bigger deals. I mean, look, we started with a 25-unit property while I was working a full-time job. That was the hardest year of my life, because I was trying to manage it myself, and then I hadn't had employees before. The deals we're closing on now, we have full staffs, we have systems in place, we have a process for taking over these properties. So it's basically just rinse and repeat. It's the same process over and over again. And every time we do it, you get that much better at it. So it's having people that are able to help you build and grow, and that's what makes it so much easier. I think that the smaller you are, the harder it is, and it goes back to the I'm a mentality. I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do everything. I'm a burns out quick. So when you have a great team, and guys, multifamily is a team sport. At the end of the day, the better your team is, the better that you're going to be, and the easier your life is going to be, and you're going to be able to have 6 kids like Gino and hang out at the beach.
And that's what I really observed at your conference, is that you brought in some of the team players that you guys have used in the past. You guys talked to some of the, whether it is self-directed IRA folks or attorneys or it is management companies. You kind of had some of these folks that are actually in the business, and that's why I really appreciated being at the conference and kind of listening to some of the people. So I thought it was a high quality conference. And are you guys doing one next year?
Yeah, I think, Gino, we're looking at Florida, right? In October?
Yeah. That's End of October. Yeah, Paul, if you don't mind, let me just add one thing to what Jake said, though. I wouldn't tell people, my mentor told me, think big, but start small. If you're going to think as big as possible, think 100, 200, 250 units, but start wherever you feel comfortable. I mean, for us, the 25 units was comfortable. It got us to 1,000 units. So if you have to start small, it's okay. Just start. That first deal is the most important, because you're either going to have 0 units or you're going to have multiple units. You're not going to have one deal. You're going to have multiple. So start wherever you feel comfortable, and then it's your responsibility and it's your duty to start scaling up and to get as big as possible.
Yeah, I want to touch on that as well, too, because I think a lot of folks getting started off, it's all about syndication. And syndication is great. We're starting to do syndication now, but I'm going to tell you the tax benefits of real estate are real and they're amazing. So I think as you start to, maybe if it's a money issue and you started off by syndicating, as you start to go, try to put some money aside and buy a deal yourself, because those tax benefits, if you can take more of that home to yourself, it's going to be really sweet. And if you can, with the bonus depreciation and everything with the cost seg going on right now, you can build up a nice swell. And basically the idea behind that is you're going to keep what you make. So it's really nice tax benefits, and as you refi these things, you can pull that out if you plan on buying and holding. So I think that just trying to open folks' eyes up to using whatever tool you have in the box, depending on the deal, and take what the defense gives you, because it doesn't just have to be we're going to buy it ourselves, or it just doesn't have to be syndication, and it doesn't just have to be agency. I think I love community banks. We love buying distressed properties with community banks and turn them around and refine them to agency. So I think just keep an open mind and try to apply the best sort of strategy to each deal as they come.
Yeah, and I don't want to break the 8 or 10 unit buyers out there, but if you have the ability to syndicate and bring some money to the table, don't be selfish. Help more people. Buy more units.
Yes, completely agree.
Mm-hmm.
So if people wanted to reach out to you guys and know a little bit more about what you guys do, what's the best contact information?
Yeah, you can get us at jakeandgino.com. You can check us out at randpartnersllc.com. We're on the Facebook, the YouTube, Instagram, all that stuff, handle at Jake and Gino. So
we appreciate your time, guys. And that's Gino and Jake for this podcast.
There you go. The G-Dad.
That, my friend. I like that.
Yeah, so the Gino and Jake Show, we appreciate Jake and Gino. If you're looking for the podcast, they do a great job, and they'll have some information about getting together sometime next year. So, Michael, anything to
we appreciate it. Nice to meet you guys. Appreciate you guys having me on the podcast a few months ago, and wish you guys the best of luck, and hope to see you guys next year at your conference.
That works. All right, Jake, Gino, thanks. I'm Paul Peoples. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please join us at oldcapitalpodcast.com to sign up for our weekly email updates. We'll see you next week for another great interview.